You ask me, Alex, why does it take so long for JRPGs to start getting good? And I tell you, you're wrong. That might have been a little harsh, but I'm Alex O'Neill. This is Alex Talks, where I sit around every Tuesday and Friday and discuss a video gaming topic of my choosing, or yours. And if you'd like me to choose one of your topics, just tweet them at me, and I will, of course, do them on this show, if they're good. So today, I wanted to talk about the JRPG Hump. I was looking back at an old Alex Talks before I recorded this, the one about JRPGs and what I think of when I think of JRPGs. And I was watching it, and I was like, this is terrible! Why did anyone watch this? It's got like 62 views, which I know YouTubers out there are like, 62. That is adorable. But for me, that's a lot. So I don't know why 62 people or 4 people watched that over and over again to total up to 62 times. I don't know. But I wanted to do something about JRPGs to make up for what I consider a poor past product. I know it was, at the time, I thought it was good. Maybe at the time I knew it was horrible and I just was rejecting it. But I want to do something current that I think is relevant, because I don't know if I've been saying this for the past 2 years or not, but I feel like we're still going through like a renaissance of JRPGs, and I'm like really happy about that. And I've said like in the past sentence at least 20 times. So I'm excited about JRPGs. I am always excited about JRPGs, whether it's a new one or an old series that I've played a lot of. But the one thing I always get why nobody plays JRPGs is the hump. Why? Why does there have to be such a big hump right when it starts? And for me, and I think maybe it's just me, maybe I'm alone in this, I don't know. But we'll see. Let me know. I don't think there's a hump. I think people are looking at it the wrong way. Like I don't think there are a lot of genres of games that kind of throw you right into it. There are a lot of games that rely very heavily on tutorials, especially by today's standards. And JRPGs are, they're one of them, but I think they do it in a different way. JRPGs usually focus around story, an epic story. It's always 60 hours long or something like that. 30 to 60 hours long, when the average game today is 8 to 12 hours long. And a lot of people are upset about that. And I think, there's a game out there for everybody. I firmly believe that, which is a whole nother Alex Talks. With I think that those people might find JRPGs gratifying. They're long experiences with usually very complex gameplay that hopefully doesn't get too far up its own ass. Hopefully doesn't get too complicated or too just, the narrative doesn't get so crazy and miscombobbled that it's almost impossible to stay along like Kingdom Hearts kind of is at this point. Like, the main narrative in Kingdom Hearts is understandable, it makes sense, and while you're playing it, you understand what's happening, but then you get into the extra games and the lore, especially the lore. The lore is all kinds of fucked up, and it's very confusing. If you play Dream Drop Distance and didn't get a headache at the end of it, I don't even know who you are or the level of brain power that would require in order to do that. I looked at the box of Dream Drop Distance and read Dream Drop Distance, and I got a headache. Like, that threw me for a loop. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts is definitely the bad example, but there are a lot of games that stand alone in their franchises that are just good stories that a lot of people don't play because they're like, it's going to take 4 hours before it gets interesting. And I just don't think that's true. Like, it depends very much so on what you consider interesting. If you consider first-person shooting interesting and nothing else interesting, then why are you even watching this? It says JRPG in the title. But if you're willing to give it a shot, I think it is the thing. Now, the JRPG Hump, I call it the JRPG Hump, because there's no really better term for it. Every JRPG you play has some kind of hump. Like Final Fantasy VII, for example. That's a classic game. The hump, I would say, is the entire first 4 show hours, which is Midgar. And once it might even be longer than 4 hours, but once you get out of Midgar and hit the world map, that's when the hump is over. If you're not committed then you won't be committed for the rest of it. I think that's kind of the premise of the JRPG Hump. A lot of people, when they're introducing a JRPG to their friend or something, they're like, just give it a few hours and then you'll start enjoying yourself. That's so misleading. I really don't like that. Like, Final Fantasy 13 didn't get interesting until 13 hours in or 11 hours in. I totally disagree. As I've said before on this show, that's misleading. It's not true in a lot of cases, and I don't like people saying that. It is so misleading that it aggravates me. Final Fantasy 13 has a very linear story, but so does Uncharted 3, and a lot of people say Uncharted 3 is interesting from the get-go. Why is Final Fantasy 13 not interesting from the get-go? I was so fascinated with what was happening in 13, and I wanted to know why it was happening, that from the moment it started in that amazing train scene, and then the boss that you start the game off with Lightning and Zaz, I was so in it. As soon as the train scene ended, and it went right into that boss fight, I was all in. I was ready to play. And I enjoyed the gameplay. I thought the gameplay was super, super gratifying. So I don't understand the people that are saying it takes 11 hours for it to get interesting. And to explain it, this is why people thought it got interesting. At 11 hours in, the whole party gets together for the first time. Like, basically, you have full party management. You can switch people in and out. And the Lilium, not the Lilium orbs, that's Tales of Xillia, the Crystallis tree that you use to level up, everyone's fully opens because you now have everyone, all 6 members of the party. And you can only have 3 at a time in your party, but, or maybe 4, I don't remember. It's 3. But you have access to everyone now, so they open up a bunch of new level up paths, and the difficulty spike happens then, where it really starts challenging you because you can change your party at will. As opposed to all the sections before then, where you have 2 characters in there, or 2 or 3 characters, and you have to play with them for a certain amount of time until the next chapter. So, I mean, if you consider that a hump, then yes, it's a JRPG hump. If you consider that completely uninteresting, then I don't know. I guess that's your prerogative, but I don't think it's uninteresting. I'll use another example of a game with a JRPG hump. I'll use Persona 4, and this is one that's touchy. I think it is definitely more of a traditional JRPG hump, which is like, so Persona 4 starts, you make you name your character, he shows up, and it's pretty much just dialogue cutscene after cutscene for an hour and a half, and you don't even really get to move around. And then about an hour and a half in, you go into the Shadow world, or the TV world, and you have your first combat encounter, and then there's a couple more cutscenes for about 30 more minutes. You go back into the Shadow world, and you finally are moving around in a dungeon. And that's when the game changes a bit, where you have full control in the dungeon, and then when you come out of that, you have full control walking around school, and you can develop your social links and all that. That's about 3.5 hours, I think, before you really get that. Maybe a little less. And people consider that the hump, but it's just a really heavy-handed exposition, which usually that's what the JRPG hump is. But once you, unlike many other JRPGs where they're kind of introducing new mechanics until you have all the mechanics, and that's the end of the hump, Persona just kind of throws everything at you through exposition, and then the hump's over, and you can learn and understand the mechanics at your own pace. But I think that exposition, where you're meeting the characters and you're kind of getting to know people in very subtle ways, there's a lot of foreshadowing in that exposition. There's a lot of comprehension that is going on. You need to be taking in and comprehending and then processing the information that is being thrown at you in these dialogue scenes in order to it sets the tone for pretty much the entire game. I look at the JRPG hump in Persona 4, and most JRPGs like the exposition of a movie. When a movie starts, usually there's some kind of cold open where, especially if it's an action movie, where you see the protagonist doing what he's going to be doing for the rest of the movie, but it's just showing you doing it, and and not really giving you context around it. And then it breaks, and then you meet the protagonist and his team, or the group of characters and the main characters or whatever, and it sets everything up, and then you go into it. You go into the rising action, and all of that beginning part is exposition, and exposition is the name of the JRPG Hump in reality. It's not the JRPG Hump, it's exposition. They're setting the tone of the game. And some games do it better than others. Like Tales of Vesperia, I think, does it very well. But maybe Persona 4 doesn't do it as well if you're not already very committed to playing a game that's focused on story. I just think it's wrong to say it gets good after the first 3 hours. Just get through the first 3 hours. Just get past the garbage that is the first 3 hours, and then it gets good. That's so not correct on so many levels. I consider a game that has interesting characters and well-written dialogue interesting from the moment it starts. And yes, maybe it gets more interesting, but that doesn't mean it's not good to begin with. I think that's misleading and it's incorrect. If you have been worried about getting into JRPGs, maybe because they're a huge time sink, or maybe because you're worried about the JRPG Hump, I would say put it to rest. If you like a game with story, JRPGs are the right place to go. They have very complex mechanics that they introduce to you over an extended period of time, but right from the get-go, there's a lot of story, and it's all usually pretty quality, especially if it's a mainstay franchise like Persona, or Tales, or Final Fantasy. Kingdom Hearts, on the other hand, that's just play it from the beginning if you want to get in that franchise, and you'll be all right. But it's complicated. Twitter question. All right, so this is a new thing that you guys saw that whatever title card I should put in there. It's something I want to try. I'd like to, for these Tuesday talks, I'd like to take questions and kind of see where it goes. But it's like an additional segment toward the end where you guys can input something. Since I don't get a lot of Twitter questions, but I figured I'd put the poll out there. If you have questions, send them in to me, and I will answer them on Alex Talks. So I put out the tweet. I said, hey, I'm about to record Alex Talks. Does anybody have any questions for me? And this is more of an example question, but at Sonic XX Samurai hesitantly asked me what my favorite color is. And I can tell you my favorite color is scarlet. And my phone falls on the ground. Scarlet's my favorite color. I like red. Red's always been my favorite color. Specifically scarlet, the shade of scarlet, I very much enjoy. I don't know why. I think it's, scarlet and gold are the colors of Gryffindor from Harry Potter. And that definitely helps. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. So that's definitely a contributing factor. But yes, scarlet's my favorite color. But if you have any questions, feel free to tweet them at me, and I will get back to you on here if you'd like. So thank you, Sonic's XX Samurai, for the question. I appreciate it. Feel free to send in more in the future. But this has been Alex Talks. I hope you liked it. If you did, give me a little like underneath it here. I would very much appreciate that. Subscribe, of course, and there will be more. Every Tuesday and Friday is when I try and get these things out. Follow me on Twitter, and I will be tweeting at you when I'm recording, and if you have any questions, you can send them to me there, or if you have topic ideas, either way. Just make sure it's video game related. But yeah, I will see you guys Friday for my Friday chat. But until then, I will talk to you guys later.